Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here with another episode of the IT Business Podcast, the show for IT professionals and MSPs, where we try to help you run your business better, smarter, and faster. So this episode, folks, is going to be first of what I told you was coming. This is the 10th year that I have been the host of this podcast in some form or fashion. And I said that I would be reaching back and talking about some of the origins of my getting started. And that would include reaching out to some people that were doing this, well before I was, probably even better than I was. And one of the people that I first contacted when I thought about getting involved was a gentleman who was running a network. And I thought, you know what? They have a show. That show has disappeared. I'm going to see if I can bring it back. And I reached out to him and he told me, no, somebody beat you to it. But if you want a podcast, hang out and we'll figure something out for you. I am talking about Steve McLaughlin, the DoorToDoor Geek of Podnutz. Door, how are you?
Hey, Uncle Marv. Honestly, I'm doing okay. All things considered, still hustling, still moving forward.
Yeah. Nice. So things are still going well over there at Podnutz, my original station, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, they've definitely slowed down, partially just because getting old, man. Getting old hurt. But I'm also trying to end on a high note in my 29th year of government employment. And I'm trying to make sure that when that's done, I'm going to be prepared to start a second career, or actually like fourth career, and hopefully integrate more podcasting into that as well.
More podcasts. That seems to be the route that a lot of us are taking. I've got a couple more under my belt, just so you know.
Very good. Yeah. Well, the truth was, every time someone would contact me and say, hey, I want to do a podcast, I always just thought, man, I don't even want to reply to this email, because I'm going to get somebody who has a mush mouth and they sound like they have marbles in their mouth and there's constantly hiccuping, or their teeth won't stop whistling, or their dog won't stop barking, or something in that effect. So it's like, oh, okay. And you were almost the only one. There was only one other person that as soon as I heard an audio recording of, I was like, that's it. We got to find something. There's a way. We just got to make it happen.
Really?
Because for those who don't know, for the first 30 years of my life, I spoke never to no one at all. I had a horrible speech disfluency. I couldn't say 3 words without stuttering or stammering or blocking for 30 seconds or 3 minutes, even sometimes. So I made shutting up and listening like an art form kind of thing. And when people speak badly or poorly, it always just aggravated me so much when I was younger. And then I heard you, I'm like, here we go. We can do this. No problem. And I tried to give as many caveats as I could and as much freedoms as you wanted to. And you did a damn good job, Marv, is what I'm going to say.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. For those that don't know, when we talk about Podnutz, the original, I don't know if it's the original tech network, but to me it was, Podnutz spelled with a Z, and that's where the show was in the beginning. It was actually started by Matt Rainey, and I brought him back in 2016 when we, brought the show back to life. You've got a bunch of shows over there, but the flagship show, Android App Addicts, that was always the anchor for the network. You guys were doing a great job over there. You, Ardini, and I believe his name was Sean Dirty Thumbs Johnson or something like that.
Exactly. Yep. Old Dirty.
Oh, my goodness gracious. But yeah, so the original name of this show, for those, we have a lot of new listeners in the last few years. The original name was Podnutz Pro. Podnutz was the original name, the computer repair podcast. Then there was Podnutz Daily. And I believe that was the show that Steve Cherubino, the original founder of Podnutz, would just come home after a day of work and just open up the mic and talk about how things went that day.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit venting, a little bit, this is what I learned, a little bit of, can you believe this? And then a little bit of, what am I supposed to do about this now? Kind of thing. So the really thing I liked about him was he admitted This is what I did. I don't know if it's the right thing. And then he would welcome feedback and people saying, well, this is how I would do it. This is how I would do it. And then we as a community very quickly learned one of the best and worst things about Microsoft operating systems is there's never one way.
Right.
There's a billion ways. And none of them are wrong if they work. Kind of thing. So yeah, that was definitely to me, a high speed educational time of my life.
All right. Very nice. So let's talk about the origins of you as well, because I'll be honest, I can imagine the name DoorToDoor Geek, where it came from, but I never heard the true story. And, every time we would get together at a hangout or something, there was always a bunch of people around. We were doing so many things, and I never got to sit down and say, how did you become Door?
The real reason was because the very, very, very first Android App Addicts episodes we did was me, Steve Cherubino, Steve D'Amico, and me. And to have Steve and Steve would make a very confusing show. So I basically said, I tried to do this computer repair business, and I had a good friend of mine, Earl the Pearl, professional wrestler, did the artwork for me kind of thing. And he was like, oh no, I'll tell you what you are right now. You are a geek. You are a geek of geeks. I can picture you biting a head off a chicken. He said, and liking it. And then he said, and you going to places of business to get things done, you're going door to door and door to door. So you are the DoorToDoor Geek. I said, oh, okay.
Wow.
And it just stuck. But then in the show, I remember it was literally like episode 1. We were like 3 minutes into it. And Steve Cherubino, I was going to say Steve, but then Steve Cherubino stopped and like, this is too confusing. This is not going to work. And I was like, just call me Door. And that's like where it stuck.
Okay. So it wasn't you actually out hitting the pavement as a door-to-door geek trying to do a computer repair business on the side.
Well, I mean, I did have a small thing where I would have a lady I worked with, her husband worked for a bank and he had problems, and she knew I was a nerd, and she would pay me to come and fix his computer, get it back up and running. And then somebody else, my mother-in-law she was a real estate agent manager kind of thing, at a whole office of agents. And she said, they can sell houses. They can't do a damn thing on a computer right. So she would then, tell them my name, and I would literally go to their house and help them set up all kinds of stuff and processes. And here's how you set up email kind of thing. So then it just sprouted, kind of naturally is what I'm going to say. And then I was very quickly after that reminded, wait a minute, I got into computers because I hate people. I hate talking to people. So then I didn't do it as much.
Nice.
And marriage, settling in, I convinced my wife to quit state employment, go get a real job. I'll keep the state job. I'll keep the insurance. I'll keep the leave and everything. So then household income got to a point to where I was like, I don't need to go out and make side money.
Very nice. Very nice. And she was happy to go out and get that. Was it a corporate job?
She made it very clear that if she stayed home, she would kill all the kids. It's only a matter of time. I got to get out of this house kind of thing. And she knew her craft very, very, very well. When she worked for state government, I was able to access some of the numbers, and I could see the average counter service rep doing 20 to 40 transactions a day. And she was doing 120 transactions a day. So I was like, you got to get out of here. And then when she hit the private world, they realized you're doing the work of 3 people. I don't mind giving you a raise. So she, for 6 years, literally went back and forth, bouncing between multiple places, each one offering her more money, and more money, and more money, until finally she's like, I'm done moving. I'm going to stay here for a while.
So would you call yourself a kept man?
I will say I married someone smarter than myself.
That's what they tell you to do, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
No, nice. Very nice. My my wife works with me now, so I went the other way.
Hey, As long as you, at the end of the day, can turn and say, yes, dear, you're fine.
Don't let her hear you say that.
Well, happy wife. Well, there's two lines. In public, I say, happy life, happy wife. In private, I quote Tom Arnold in the movie True Lies. Women, can't live with them, can't kill them.
That's true. That is true. Don't let her hear you say that either.
Yeah.
So let's ask you this. How did the Android App Addicts show actually begin? Was it something that you, as a listener to the Podnutz network, one of you people reached out to Steve and said, hey, we have a show idea, or was he looking for something? How did that come about?
Well, the first interaction that was memorable was Steve Cherubino was asking for feedback for some issue, some question kind of thing. And he loved audio feedback. And with my speech impediment and stuff, I was really always a little bit hesitant to do it. But then one time I was literally in the middle of feeding my now oldest kid. I didn't have time to sit down and do an email. So I literally on my phone called up the voicemail number and left a message. But at the end of the message, I didn't hit end call. And I said something to the effect of, why don't you just eat the waffle? So then after that, Steve kept asking me to send feedback and stuff. And then after I was on an episode of Podnutz where he just interviewed me about my technique for, antivirus and remote desktop and all this kind of stuff. He learned that I liked the Linux a lot. And then we started Linux for the rest of us. And then a little bit into Linux for the rest of us, maybe a year or two, I said, Steve, I'm telling you right now, this Android app ecosystem, this mobile app ecosystem is not going to quit. It's just going to keep having more and more and more and more apps, and they will never stop. We need to do a show about it. And then, of course, we started it, and then less than 3 weeks later, Twit Network started all about Android. And they swore they were the first Android show, but we see who's still around. So.
So I have to imagine that all of you listeners back then, because you were Linux, you were also Android, Yahoos like me showed up with, iOS.
No. I mean, one of the things I wholeheartedly believe in, and this was back when I first started Linux, was knowing Windows or knowing Mac was great, but knowing Windows and Mac and Linux made you better understand each operating system and the choices they made to get where they are, which then makes you understand, well, this operating system has this limitation because of this, and that has that because of that. Same thing with the mobile operating systems. As time has marched on, I'm telling you, Marv, year after year after year after year, Android is becoming more and more and more like iOS, and iOS is becoming more and more and more like Android.
Well, I think it's a combination of the fact that everybody wants their apps to be able to be run everywhere. So to some degree, they have to be similar in a sense to make it easier. So I get that.
Yeah. And it's like the competition each have drives each other to say, well, he can do this. Why can't you do that? Well, she can do this. Well, why can't you do that? So then they keep adding features, trying to outdo one another. And we as users are the beneficiaries.
Yeah. Now, a question that I've never asked you, and first of all, let me say this. You guys actually let me come on a show once. And I don't know why, because I was throwing out apps and I had this joyful chore of trying to find an app that I was familiar with in the iOS environment and making sure that it was also available in Android, because I couldn't bring an app that wasn't on Android. So if I went through that trouble just for that one show, how do you guys go through finding apps for all of your shows? Because you guys are at over 600 shows now. Mm-hmm. I remember days where you guys would go through 15, 20 apps. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of apps. How do you choose the apps?
Well, I'll first say, in hindsight, Marv, it's crazy because almost half the people who contact me on that show don't even own an Android device.
Really?
They it's because they know if I'm talking about something, it either was on iOS for 6 months already, or in 6 months it will be on iOS kind of thing. So that was the kind of thing that blew my mind. Throughout the years, obviously, techniques have changed, is what I'm going to say. Right now, we're having like a problem with these mobile systems because every time there's a good, super functional app in 18 months or less, the app is no longer needed because that functionality is now baked into the operating system. And we keep having that over and over and over again, which means I don't want to say it's getting harder to find apps, but you got to know what you're looking for and realize when you're looking at it that it is a good app.
Right.
So that to me is really hard part. One of the sources I go to is, of course, I go to my advanced search engine search, and literally Android app best, filter it, only things for the last week or whatever. And then boom, there's at least like a couple. But one of the better repositories I'm finding as of late is F-Droid, F-Droid, which is a free open source app store alternative. And everything there basically has to be open source, but they have a very, very good change log that happens once a week under their news blog section. And you have to basically go down to the bottom of the week's news article. And then near the very bottom, it will say, here are the apps that got removed. And they'll name like 4 or 5 apps. This got removed because it was using an old library. This got removed because it was found to have this risk in it. And then you click this other link and it will list like 100 updated and new apps this week. And quite literally half the time I just go through that list and just look at the names. No. Ooh. No. Ooh. And then I pick like 10 or so apps, and then I glance at them. I look at them. I download them. I play with them. And I try to always have at least 10 apps every show because I never want to bring 10 apps. You know what I mean? My logic is I always want to bring more than I need so I have stuff on the floor. And the good stuff is my logic is the stuff I bring, and the stuff that's on the floor just didn't make the cut.
So I had heard you guys mention this F-Droid, and I was going to ask you about that because I looked up what it was, obviously, a nice repository, but my first thought was, okay, who found that and why did they find it? And was it an attempt to really de-Google, the Android ecosystem?
I don't want to say de-Google, but at least offer opportunities. Now, in the very, very beginning, if we flash back 10 years ago or so, there was a thing called ROMing, where people could root their device, get admin on their device, and replace the operating system on it. And there were many, many, many options you could install because Android is Linux-based. You could install the operating system, and they would de-Googlify the operating systems. So there was no hooks in the back end. There was no services running in the back where Google could secretly get into your phone kind of thing. It was just the free open source Android things. And these stores would pop up and they would try to fill that gap of, well, we don't have a Play Store. We can come here. F-Droid is one of the few ones that have been able to pivot where the ROMing scene is basically dead. To where now what they focus on is extreme transparency in the app, where the app came from, and linking to source code. And they try to also post when or if something was third-party audited, which is one of those things that we're learning day by day in the tech world. Like when stuff like OpenSSH or SSH is not independently third-person audited, really bad things can happen for the globe.
That is true. So F-Droid, the alternative, entirely free and open source.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Yeah, and like one of the apps I use, it's weird. It's almost like you can buy from multiple stores in like one website. Like imagine if you had one website where you could look at Temu, you could look at AliExpress, you could look at Amazon, you could look at eBay, you could look at Office Supply, all these places, all from just one interface. One of the apps I use that does that purpose for me is called Obtanium. Obtanium. And what it can do not only can it search F-Droid, but it can literally search the entirety of GitHub for Android apps. Now with GitHub, the code's there already, so we know the code's out there. And you can literally get your updates directly from GitHub releases, which means F-Droid can sometimes be a little bit behind because the people have to submit their changes to F-Droid. They usually prioritize Google Play because that's where the money's at. So they prioritize updating that one and making it fresh again. But with Obtanium, I can, as soon as they hit release on GitHub, I can get that update. So I'm finding a lot of really good apps through that service. And I like the fact that it tells me basically like how often something is typically updated. Because, depending on the app and depending on the type of information in the app, I might want this thing updated very frequently, or it might have such, non-personal information in it. I don't care if it's never updated.
Gotcha. So I myself did a search where I was trying to find, is there something in the F-Droid universe that also exists in the iOS universe? And the first thing that came up was an app called MSP Process.
There you go.
So the mobile technician app, which basically is secure communications. It's really not an RMM or anything like that, but it has a bunch of stuff in there: SMS, chat, email, and push notification channels. So very interesting.
Yeah, I would expect all the solutions in there would not be, the nice way to put it, not all encompassing, but very niche.
Very niche. Yeah. Very narrow focus.
Use cases. Yeah.
So I've got a 2-part question. And the first is, I'm assuming going to be an easy answer. How many people recommend apps for you guys to talk about on the show? And then the second half of that question, I see you. Go ahead and answer.
I'm thinking because it's random. There are busy periods and slow periods, but there are times where we have, like in a month, 8 different people or 10 different people, like regulars is what I call them, pinging me about stuff. I'll say we get new randos, maybe like 2 a month, that submit once, and I don't hear from them again for like a year.
All right. The second half of that question is, do you have apps that you guys talk about? And I say talk about in the sense of you're not recommending these apps to people. You're not, ranking these and saying this is a great app, you got to get it. But are there apps that you have talked about that you're like, oh man, shouldn't have talked about that?
Yes and no. What happened in the beginning, there was in Podnutz, there was the show Nuts at Night. And Steve D had a blast talking about things in such a way where Steve Cherubino would take an hour to pick up on the fact that wait a minute, I asked you for something good and you're bringing me something negative kind of thing. Like he couldn't catch it kind of thing. So what happened there for a while, Eric Ardini would bring what he called crap apps. And he said, here's an app I found. It's stupid. It's useless. Do not install this. And he would try to find the absolute worst and ugliest and buggiest thing he could. And man, they were some ridiculous crap apps, I'll say. But the one thing I will say I'm super happy about is every single time I've ever heard anything about an actual Android exploit from apps, 99.999% of the time, you can't even get those apps in America. When you see these websites, I'm like, get rid of these 30 applications from your Android phone immediately, or else you're going to get hacked. They're all in China. They're not even available in the U.S. market. And every time I do see the ones that are available in the U.S. market, we've never suggested them except one app. And that was, I want to say it was called, it was a file explorer that everybody loved for years. And then they sold it to somebody else, like how every now and then your browser plugin can get sold and become bad.
Right.
That was what happened. It was it wasn't Solid File Explorer, but it was It wasn't FX, but it was something like that.
Was it
2 letters?
Explore File Manager?
I want to say, I thought it had two letters in the very beginning, but it was sold easily like 6 years ago. So I'll say 5-6 years ago.
Or ES File Explorer.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
You got it.
Yeah.
ES File Explorer. It was great. I loved it. It had plugins. It had all these little things. If you wanted to, you could install SSH servers and other things to connect to.
It had an FTP client in it. I remember that.
Yeah, and then it got sold, and then wow, on a dime became garbage.
That's what some big companies do, right?
I mean, I can only imagine they're in it, they're doing it, and they just become exhausted and tired and like, I can't do this anymore. Let me just sell it. I don't care who I sell it to. Mama needs new shoes or something.
Yeah. And then whoever buys it thinks that they can figure it out, but they don't have a tech on staff that can, keep it up to date, or they break a code and don't know how to fix it.
Well, and I'll say this, you're almost mirroring a conversation that me and Steve Cherubino had a while ago.
Yeah.
When he wanted to not own Podnutz anymore. When he started it, I didn't want to buy it. I had the money. And anyway, she controls the money, not me. She's better than me. She's smarter than me. But then he got to a point to where he told me, look, I don't want to sell it for the money. I'm not selling it for the money. I'm selling it because I can't do it anymore. And I want somebody to try to do it the way I've done it. And he had more than a couple people offer him a lot more money than he got from me. And he knew, and he said he knew in his heart of hearts that they were going to try to just suck the name dry of money and not worry about, what people thought of it. Just, use it, abuse it, squeeze it dry.
Right. So, yeah, Steve, when he sold it and you bought it, I think everybody was happy that it was staying, one, in the community, and I think that was a good thing. Now, granted, at one time, there were a lot of shows on the network.
At one time, I was doing 5 a week myself.
Yeah. I was on there. Jeff Hallish was on there. Who else? Lisa Hendrickson.
Mm-hmm.
You had a bunch of other people on there. Martin Obando. The Geeksters was on there.
Whatever you do, don't forget, stay gruntled.
No, it's be gruntled.
Be gruntled. Sorry,
be
gruntled. Yes. Be gruntled, yes.
And then we all started to leave you. Any bad feelings there? You hate me for that?
Oh, absolutely not, sir. No. My whole thing was I always thought and I expected, I really never wanted somebody who was doing podcasts for years to say, I want to be on Podnutz. I don't know. I'd much rather have somebody not knowing how much of a pain it is, not knowing how much work it is doing stuff, getting it set up right, not understanding mic presence and do things right, but somebody who wants to grow and become better at doing something. That's what I always wanted. And my whole logic was, you're not supposed to stay here forever. You're supposed to stay here till you get comfortable, stay here till you feel, confident, and then do what you want to do. If you want to go someplace else, you can. If you want to stay here, you can. But, you're always going to be better off when you're the captain of your own ship. Which is like one of the reasons why, like when I at least tried with every show, I tried not to, step in, stick my nose in and tell people what to do or how to do or what thing, but to do it yourself because, this is your ship. I'm just a guy across the waters watching. So
for me, it's been 10 years, even though I rebranded the show and everything. And I always look back to that time. How was the 10 years been for you when you look back? I know it's longer because you were a part of this longer, but it's been a decade.
Yeah. I'll say this, there's been 2 extremely life-changing events involved with it. The first to me was a joyous event, but it wasn't even on Podnutz. I was on a show called Unbootables where we asked Tim, who was around Podnutz for a long time, to be on a show. And then we were doing the show, then we invited Tim on the show, and then Tim showed up on the show, and Tim was not the Tim we were expecting. Instead, it was a Tim who was on the Podnutz forums known as In Like Tim. And that was one of the best things I think that's ever happened to me on any recording ever. And the dirty secret is I still chat with the guy at least like 2 or 3 times a week. He is the sweetest, most nicest guy I think I've ever met in my life. Loves to laugh, loves to say, like quippy things. And he understands a lot of tech stuff. He was doing it for a very long time and just have fun. And that was when I realized, I need to loosen up a little bit. I need to, just talk. Just talk, because I truly believe people listen to a podcast for 2 separate reasons. There's the reason they tell everybody else they listen. You got to listen to Marv. He does this and he knows about that and he's this and he's that. But the real reason they listen is because they love hearing Marv's voice. They love the history they know about Marv, and they know when he says something where it came from, and they can then say, I bet you if this happened, Marv would do this kind of thing. It's that connection that they make that they really do like to watch or to listen to the show or participate even. And then I had the complete opposite event right before COVID when Eric Ardini pinged me and told me he had 3 months to live. And to a guy who was the sweetest, nicest guy I think I've hung out with ever, that really still to this day hurts really bad. It's just proof nice guys never stick around.
So I was still there, and I remember that. I remember our 24-hour podcast that we did. Straight through, continuous, no breaks. That was an undertaking.
It was exhausting. And my butt really hurt. That's when I knew I need a chair. My butt ain't built for this.
I actually looked up his GoFundMe, and I think it was 2 or 3 years old. It's up. How's the family doing? Do you keep in touch with them?
After about 2 years, his wife was like, I can't talk about this anymore. She needed to move on is the way I'm going to put it.
Gotcha.
So, every now and then I still, when I have extra money, I throw it into that GoFundMe. Every now and then I know some other people who were on the network back then still, try to help when they can. I believe she moved like more than a couple towns away. All of his children now are old enough out of the house, starting a life. I know for a fact, every now and then when I do a show, I do see one of his kids pop in the chat room. They don't say anything, but I know it's them because of the name. And, yeah.
So in terms of your plans, both personally and for Podnutz, anything that you know for sure coming down the road, or are you just going to ride the thing out?
The only thing I know for sure is I'm going to have to pay taxes and die. Your timing is pretty kind of funny, Marv. Less than 2 weeks ago, I did send an email to 6 people individually, saying, Linux has gotten so unbelievably boring in the last like 6 years because it's all enterprise hardware. It's all enterprise operating system. It's all this back end infrastructure. It's all this AI slop, hype, bubble stuff. All of the desktop things, because here's the dirty secret, Marv. 99.9999.9% of all the desktop issues that you've ever heard people have in Linux don't exist anymore. Yeah, it's hard to get a good video editor. Okay, I'll give you that one. And yes, Adobe still won't run on Linux. That's not a Linux problem. That's an Adobe problem. I'm just going to say that. But I mean, virtually everything else you can imagine, think of, or do is literally sometimes easier or quicker to do on Linux. Granted, you got to know what to click, but just like on Windows, you had to know where to click to get something done. I would really like to do more Linux type stuff. Because the real truth is Linux is going to own gaming nearly outright very shortly. The gaming industry already makes way more money than Hollywood has ever made. Linux has the Steam Deck Valve behind it with the Proton that they've been developed. It's now unbelievable the number of games you just click and they just work. There's no effort. They're coming out with a Steam Machine, which is a TV-based console, and the Steam Deck. Both of them, you can very easily one click drop to a desktop and in one click install whatever you want. Right. A browser, an Office suite, VPN software, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's all right there. But then secretly, Valve has been investing in Linux and Android now for 10 years, working on a Android layer for their headset, their VR headset, which is also coming out in 2026, which Meta has already admitted the Quest is dead. Developers are trying to contact them to get stuff done. They won't even reply anymore. Valve has already created a one-shot application. You take your Meta APK, because Meta's headset is nothing more than Android. You take that Meta file, you one-click it, now it's going to work perfectly fine on the Valve headset that's coming this year, and with no issues, it's just going to work. They've also been secretly investing millions of dollars on a transformation layer. You take any game that's on Android, and without the developer doing anything, the layer will be able to interpret foreground, background, and put a parallax effect into it, even though the developer had nothing to do with it, to make the game native 3R VR like.
Okay.
So the amount of money, and you got to remember, in December alone, Valve made $1.6 billion. Do you know how many employees Valve has, Marv?
No, I do not.
Take a guess. I love when people guess.
100? 50.
Nope. 35.
35.
35.
Okay. So we know that Linux is big outside of the corporate arena. It's behind gaming, as you said.
No.
Wait. I know that it's behind a lot of the networking tools that I use. The handheld tools are all running Android Linux.
Azure is 100% Linux.
Okay. The
back end of Azure is 100% Linux.
Yeah, but most techs and MSPs don't know that.
I know. That's true. It's just like the number one most installed database in the world. Nobody knows.
Yeah. They think of it as a Docker.
Yeah.
Let me throw my Windows machine on this.
Right. SQLite has more than 30,000 times more installs than any other database. But people don't know it. People think Oracle or SQL or whatever, No. But yeah, it is quiet. And that's the thing. There is never going to be a year of the Linux desktop. Me as a nerd know that. And I'm stopped telling people, I can't believe you're running Windows. And now you can do that on Linux for free. I'm tired of being that guy. So I'll just say, if you need help, I'll help you. If you want to know how I do stuff, I can. If you want to do it on Windows, good luck.
Now, you briefly mentioned AI in there. How much do you think AI will play a part in what happens going forward with some Linux stuff? You already talked about the gaming and all of that. Is AI going to help people learn Linux?
Well, the way that I'll say it is, I'll paraphrase Yogi Berra. Making predictions are really hard, especially when it's about the future. I firmly believe AI in a matter of years, maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 6, is going to be the equivalent of spell check.
Okay.
It's not going to do anything more impressive than anybody ever expects. It just does what it does. There's no consciousness coming from it. I can easily guarantee you of that. And it's just going to be there. The people who know how to use it will have an easier time doing their job. Just like the people, if the spell check didn't exist, Marv, I would still be working in a warehouse lifting up boxes because my spelling is that bad. With multiple learning disorders, including dyslexia and stuff. Yeah. If I didn't have spell check, there's no way I would not be in a warehouse. I think it's going to assist, make a lot of things a lot simpler, a lot easier. And dare I say, let people, the old adage was with technology, well, you're only going to have to work like 3 hours a week. No. In this country, we are always going to work our tails to the bone. The difference is AI is going to make certain tasks, certain aspects of a task simpler, easier, more manageable and expectable, like what they are. I don't think there's anything that's literally special about AI, except in actuality, we actually had exactly what AI is doing 20 years ago. It was just called Google, I'm feeling lucky. And instead of giving you back video or audio, it just gave you back text or a website.
Well, we had a lot of it back then. We had a lot of, backdoor automation. We had all of the search engines that are just now being, turned into large language models. Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, Google. That's where all that started.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I really was hoping I could retire this year, because I can't remember the guy who said it back in the 80s, but I want to say he was one of those old assembly type peoples who said, when you get into computers, this is like back in Windows 3.1, you should be programming everything you need yourself, because then you're going to get exactly what you want, because there's no off-the-shelf application that ever does everything you want and no more. Now with the vibe coding kind of thing, I really wanted to retire from my 9-to-5 and sit down and vibe code and figure out how to do all the little things that I want. So quite literally, I can walk in my room and go boom, and then just cross my arms and have it do what I expect it to do with me doing minimal effort.
Nice. All right. So I'll peek into the world of Linux, folks. Dor, thank you for doing this. Is there, I want to give you a little bit of time here. I don't know if you had anything thought-wise that you wanted to get out there, but what would you like to leave the listeners with?
Number one, always and never stop forgetting there are many people out there that not only think about you, but care about you. Just randomly ping people from your past, like Marvin did with me, and just say, hey, how you doing? Want to chat? Because I guarantee you it's always going to be good times. 2, never, ever, ever let anybody ever hold you down and say you can't do something, or you shouldn't do something, or how dare you think you could start your own business? No, what are you doing? You crazy? No, always shoot for the stars. Always shoot for the stars. In this country, the United States of America, we have the easiest path to entrepreneurship with the most safeguards in the world. if you don't try to be your own boss at least once in your life, there's only one guarantee. You'll always hate your boss. That's just life. And I will say, Marv, you got into that niche of doing the MSP things at the perfect right amount of time, because you're right. Everything about it has changed. The tools, the ecosystems, the end user knowledge, the hacks, the cracks, the crypto stuff all going. But the bottom line is customer service, being transparent to your customer, managing their expectations, giving them what you say, and then cashing that check. And if you do that, you're going to always be successful.
It has been a good time. I appreciate it. Dor, thank you very much for doing this. He is the owner of Podnutz, the tech podcast networks. Podnutz spelled with a Z. He is one of the hosts of Android App Addicts. Listen, I don't know if it's one of the premier tech podcasts out there, but I can tell you this. I did see the numbers, and you guys got a ton of downloads. You were definitely the flagship podcast of the Podnutz network. It's great to see you guys back and at it. Episode 611 is on the board now, and good to see you guys, having fun.
Yeah, and it's crazy because now I have a co-host in British Columbia, Canada, who once only wanted to podcast from his tub. And then the other host is in New Zealand, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by sheep. So, yeah, and it's 90 degrees in Christmas. It's just crazy to me. New Zealand.
Podcasting is a worldwide thing that we can all be a part of. So, Dor, I did want to say thank you. You were, like I said, one of the first people that I spoke with when I joined the podcasting world. You didn't turn me away. You let me hang out and introduced me to some folks there. I got hooked up with Jeff and Paco and the rest of the gang, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I can honestly say I would not be here now if it were not for you. So I just want to publicly say thank you.
Thank you, sir. Always good to talk to you.
All right. And we'll be back at some point and talk again. But folks, that is going to do it for this episode of the IT Business Podcast. A huge thanks to DoorToDoor Geek for hanging out with me and sharing his insights. If you got value from this conversation, do me a favor. Share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe. Do all of that stuff. I know I never really asked you for reviews or ratings, but hey, why not? And of course, support the sponsors over at itbusinesspodcast.com. Also visit there for past episodes, resources, and ways to stay in touch with me on the socials and the community. Again, that's going to do it. Thanks for listening. Until next time, holla.